Good morning, everyone. Britt Simon here. Hope you're all well. Hope you're going to have a great weekend. Saturday morning here in California. So thought I'd go live and talk to you guys. Okay, let's talk about any topics you'd like to discuss. Good morning, Caroline. How are you doing? Please, when will DV27 open? Let's start off with that one, shall we? I'm sure it's going to be asked 1,000 times. And morning, NYB. How you doing? Good to speak to you. Okay, and Joe, good morning. DV27, when will it open? We don't know. We still don't know. The same answer I've been giving for a few months now. There's no announcement of DV27 being open. And I know some people like to sort of, connect the dots and believe that, this thing means that or whatever. But honestly, the DV27, announcement is completely independent of everything else that's going on. And there's a lot of, stuff going on. But DV27 announcement is not one of those things. When it will come, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. So good morning, Giovanni from Canada. Interesting. Welcome back. Thank you. Let's see. Good morning from Nepal. Always happy to see someone from Nepal there. And hello from New York. That's awesome. Okay, let's get into some questions. I haven't got any sort of topics I wanted to discuss in particular, so I'm happy to just take the questions and we'll we'll take it from there. Will the suspension of the DV lottery process end? I'm very afraid of using my right to my EU 12K case number. Actually, I was just looking at this. So I fully believe that the pauses, the travel ban, somebody's just asking about the travel ban. The travel ban, I don't believe is going to be removed anytime soon. The travel ban is on 39 countries, and I don't think they're going to remove that. That's 212F, that's the presidential power to stop entry by a group of people. I don't think anybody's attacking that. I don't think that's going to end. The 75 country pause and the DV lottery pause, both of those, they're not the bans, and we get confused and we call those bans. They're not bans, they're pauses, right? And they're very different situation. At the end of an interview, where you're attending an interview right now, if you're not affected by the travel ban, the CEOs are saying, the consular officers are saying, we would be able to approve you. I'm very sorry, we can't issue your visa right now because of the pause. They'll maybe call it suspension. And so everything is being done. Cases are being scheduled. DS-260s are being processed. Interviews are happening. Medicals are happening. Everything is happening except for the issuance of the visa. And so if you attend your interview, you're doing that because the government have suggested you should attend the interview, you should pay the fees, you should pay for the medical and so on. And I honestly do not believe that they would be doing that in any large numbers if they believed the pause was going to last until beyond of the end of DV26. I just don't believe that that's what the plan is. I'm hoping the ban will be, sorry, the ban, I did it myself. I'm hoping the pause will be lifted within, another month or so. I've always thought it would probably be a pause for 30 to 60 days, roughly, maybe 90 days at the outside. I've always thought in those sort of terms, and their behavior has made me more confident, not less confident, that would be the case. And to an extent, as long as they lift the pause before the end of September 30th, then in a sense, it's possible to imagine no harm is being done. In a sense. Now, one of the tests of that is whether they continue to schedule people. And so I was looking at that this morning. I wanted to show you that. That sort of bit of clue work, as it were. So let me just toggle this because Zarthisius likes it when I do that. Okay, so in particular, I want to know, when I look at the data, and we would normally have much better data than we've got right now. As you know, the government have changed the CEAC system. That means that we're partially blinded. We have much less information than normal. If you look at Zarthisius's page, all of this data is pretty much out of date. We know the issuances are much higher than this now. That information is out of date, and we know that, and Zarthisius knows that, but there's nothing we can do about it, right? But what we can do is we can use this very useful dark feature. And the dark feature that Zarthisius kindly added shows when cases disappear from the cases we knew about in the beginning. So as of January the 1st, we took an extract, Zarthisius took an extract of the data, and let's say we saw a case that was at MVC at that time. If that case now is gone, it's gone because if it's now a whole, that case has gone dark. And that's because that case was scheduled at an embassy, and the embassy updated the passport and name into those 2 extra fields that have been added, and therefore it's gone dark to us. We can't extract the data for that anymore. If you know your details, you can still see your data, but we can't anonymously extract that data anymore, right? And so it's gone dark. Well, you can tell something about where the activity is happening. You can't tell anything anymore, unfortunately, about which embassies are working and that sort of thing. But you can tell what number ranges are sort of operating, right? And there's some interesting sort of findings in that, or I think it's interesting. If we look at EU is current up to 11,000. And there's a lot of dark activity in cases right up to 11,000, right? This is the extracted data that occurred last night. So, so there are cases being scheduled right up to 11,000, which means that the visa bulletin for EU should absolutely move next visa bulletin, which we'll see in a couple of weeks' time, right? It should move. If it didn't move, then that would be a very clear indicator that they are kind of keeping EU down in order to avoid lawsuits, right? From people who, who are current but not being seen. Because here's the tricky thing with the lawsuit, and this is something that people are going to have to consider. If you have not gone current, or if you've not filled in your DS-260, you're very unlikely to get a lawsuit to give you personally any relief, right? If you've not gone current. A lawsuit is not going to force your number to go current. That's not going to happen, not in a million years. And I don't think anybody is stupid enough to suggest that that's going to happen, right? I hope nobody is suggesting that's going to happen. So if you're not current, if you don't go current, right, then there's nothing a lawsuit can do for you. Even if the lawsuit wins for other people, it won't win for you because your case number is not current, right? And so that is a consideration that some people in lawsuits, are asking, if I'm this number, should I be participating in the lawsuit? Well, what I've said to people is, wait, there's no need to participate in a lawsuit right now. Curtis Morrison's lawsuit, Curtis Morrison is going to launch a lawsuit, has launched a lawsuit, but it won't be filed until mid-March, and the registration is open until the end of February, which means that you can see at least one more VB before that lawsuit is, the registration deadline is over. Now, Curtis sort of says to me he doesn't want people trying to register on the last day. I've never suggested people should register on the last day, but I don't think people should be registering until the last week into that lawsuit, because you would know a lot more then than you know now, right? That's almost a month from now, right? So, I hope people are smart enough to sort of wait on the sidelines a little bit before they jump into that. Curtis has also said, although it's not clear from his prospectus, it's not clear from the prospectus, but I think it is in the in some sort of text that actually is the agreement when you sign up to that lawsuit or something. He said that people can withdraw from his lawsuit and get a refund of their $500 up to 1 day, as long as it's 1 day before the filing of the lawsuit. That would be mid-March. And if that's true, and I've got no reason to believe it's not true, if that's true, then you could actually see 2 more visa bulletins before you make the final decision whether you're going to be in that lawsuit or not, and whether you're going to spend that, that initial $500. So So that's kind of interesting, and and the data we'll have collected, what, 7 or 8 more, extracts of data by that time. We'll see the activity happening. But going back to what I was saying, if they don't have cases scheduled, well, if they don't have cases scheduled in a region, let me show you Africa. That sort of tells the other side of the story. Africa is current up to 45,000, which, if I just scroll down a little bit, is about this point, right? Roughly about there. And you can see there is almost no dark activity. There is a little bit. There's 0.1%, 0.1%. There's almost no dark activity up to 45,000. That means that the embassies are the problem, in a sense, in Africa. The embassies are not giving enough capacity to take African cases all the way up to 45,000, right? Otherwise, more cases would be going dark, right, in this range. But as we look at Asia, we can see we've got dark cases almost up to the complete range, because the Asia region is current now, right? Has been current for a little while. And so there's activity all the way through the range. In EU, there's activity up to the 11,000. So they have to now move the visa bulletin on, particularly for EU, in order to sort of, show us that they are trying to schedule cases. If they don't do that, then it means they're not trying to schedule cases. Why would they not be trying to schedule cases? Well, because they're beginning to think the pause could last longer, right? That's why I think if you're smart, if you're listening, if you're paying attention, you would not be filing, you would not be actually registering for the lawsuit yet. That's my general perspective. I don't think people should be registering for any lawsuit right now. It's too early. I think a lawsuit may be necessary, but again, some of you are going to have to understand what I think some of you don't understand, is that a lawsuit is not fast. It can take months for a lawsuit to get action. Now, I'm sure that that Curtis is going to try and get an injunction very early in the case, but even early in the case is going to be, several weeks, possibly a couple of months into the case. So if he files in mid-March, it's going to be April, May at the earliest before anything can happen from the lawsuit, from the judge saying something. What could happen earlier than that is the government reacting to being sued by trying to do something faster, by lifting the pauses. That's a possibility. That sort of happened in the UK lawsuit. We had an interesting thing on the UK lawsuit I'll talk about in a few moments. But in the UK lawsuit, when we filed the case, behind the scenes, as we now know and as we knew at the time, the government reacted to our lawsuit. They realized they'd screwed up, which they had denied up until that point. They checked their systems behind the scenes, and even before our lawsuit went very far, they were fixing the problem. Well, we knew that because DV25 winners on August 8th were informed that they were winners, and a number of DV25 UK cases actually managed to go through and get issued. And then we saw DV26 also had 1,303 selectees added for the UK that hadn't been there before. And so, so we know that they reacted. We knew that they reacted, but in a filing this week, they actually confirmed that they reacted. They also asked to dismiss the case because we don't have any standing. We don't have standing because none of the named plaintiffs on the case were selected at low enough numbers to be selectees. That's kind of a funny way of looking at things from the government point of view. It's a bit moronic, to be honest. The government, it's the weakest, sort of stupidest argument I've seen from the government in a long time. Basically, they've admitted that we were absolutely right in every one of our allegations in the UK lawsuit, but still they want to dismiss the case, and for them to win, even though they've already done everything we wanted them to do. It's just stupid. They just need to, they're acting like little children, frankly. But, that's not really surprising considering how the chief executive behaves. Anyway, so this data is actually quite telling to me anyway. like I say, more than any other region. I mean, we can talk about Asia, but Asia is doing well compared to its current number, right? We can look at Africa, though, and we can see Africa has an embassy capacity problem. And, we've got embassies not behaving correctly in Africa. And that's why there's there's very little activity above about case number, case number 24,000. So above case number 24,000 or so, very little is happening. Right, that's bad. That's embassies. The problem there is embassies, not KCC. It's not the pause. It's the embassies misbehaving that setting a very low capacity that causes that situation. And that means, by the way, that even if Africa's VB didn't increase from 45,000, it wouldn't make any difference because they haven't filled in the gaps under 45,000 anyway. Right. This is the problem with Africa when the embassies misbehave. So, but the embassies are possibly, confused by the guidance from the government and that sort of thing. I don't know. It could be a part of it, but the reality is embassy capacity is the issue there. Whereas in EU, you can't make that same argument. There clearly is embassy capacity. They're taking the cases right up to 11,000, which is where they're at. And now they need to release more capacity. Otherwise, more visa bulletin numbers. Otherwise, that capacity will go to waste. And there is clearly capacity in the EU region, right? So that's going to be interesting. I'm hoping that's clear to some of you. You're very afraid you're using your right to your 12K case number. Let me just say a couple of things. Number one, you don't have any rights. You don't. Immigration is not a right, okay? Number two, you should feel entitled. At 12,000, you never had any risk. You didn't have any concern. You should feel entitled. And number three is you'll be all right. Calm down. You're going to be fine. At 12,000, you're going to be fine. It's very clear that, as soon as you go current, there will be an embassy that will give you a case. Now, we obviously have to see the visa bulletin move, but that's a normal concern that happens every year. You just need to relax. Okay, you'll be okay. All right. Do you think the ban will be for more than 6 months? No, I don't. When did you say DV27 will open? I didn't say when DV27 will open, and we hasn't been announced yet. Good morning, Mr. Simon from Cameroon. Good morning. Let's see. Lucas, good morning. How are you doing? We haven't even got to the United States yet, and it's going to be the Curtis Morrison lawsuit, American culture at its finest. Yeah, that's been going on for a few years. I was involved in the DV 2020 lawsuits, DV 21 lawsuits, sued the government, obviously, for the UK lawsuits. It shouldn't be like this. It's not great that it's like this. It's been a difficult few years. It didn't used to be like this, I can tell you. But we used to have better leadership. Our leadership, Davos this week. What? Our president is a complete idiot, and the things he said, the insulting things he said to NATO allies this week, and saying that nobody in NATO came to the support of America. He's not sure that anyone would come to the support of America if they made a call. Article 5 of the NATO rules has only been invoked one time, and that was by America. And at that time, I think there were 18 members of NATO, and they all came to the aid of America at that time. And there was a 20-year deployment in Afghanistan, which is that's a mixed thought process for me, because I've spoken to so many wonderful people from that country, and I know that for all the people that were lost in Afghanistan from the Allied troops, there were many more lost from civilian and non-combatant troops, non-combatants over there. So it's a mixed thing for me personally, but nevertheless, for the president of the US to suggest that what do you say, something like we were away from the front lines? What a moron! What an absolute moron! And again, I've said before, if you are upset because I talk badly about Trump, then you're probably a moron. And you know, because you can't be a sensible thinking, critical thinking person and think anything other than we've got awful leadership in place at the moment. You can't, literally, you can't. I mean, it means that you can't load up all the Lego bricks in your head if you think anything other than that. Literally, that's what it means. Because there's so much crap. There's so many bad decisions. There's so much awfulness. It's difficult to keep track of it all. But if you literally can't load all that crap into your head for a few moments and realize how bad things are, then it means you're a moron. It really, that's all it means, right? It means you can't do it at any level of critical thinking. It's not an opinion. It's not an opinion anymore. It's not a perspective. It's not a, you know, it's not like, oh, that's just what you think, Simon. No, a completely illogical, you know, thought process has had to have happened in your head to make that to make that thought come into your head. It's the only possible, you know, conclusion of that thought process, to realize that we've got bloody awful leadership at the moment in America. And I hope it will change soon, but I'm not, you know, not sure of when, but we'll see. Anyway, morning, Ryan. Speaking of UK lawsuit, how are you? Hope all is well. I know everything is still up in the air at the moment, but I still haven't completed my DS260. You're at case 130,000, I think, right? Or your girlfriend. I'm debating on what to do myself as a partner, and I'm not married either. Yeah, your partner and I thought so. What can I say, Ryan? If you love her, get married to her, right? That's the first thing. You know, if you love her, put a ring on it, as they say. Will you get current? I don't know. Let's look at the next visa bulletin for a start. It's got to move. Literally, it has to move. If EU stayed at 11,000, then that is very clearly then connected to the pause, right? That would be crystal clear, because there's no other justification. I've just shown why. Now, do we ever get to 130,000? As you know, that needs sort of a bit of a miracle. The miracle being the region going current, and for the government to be so stupid to not realize what they've done with the UK selectees, and therefore to sort of greenlight all of the UK selectees up to a case number 189,000, because they put the word current against the region, right? That would be an incredibly dumb thing for them to do. Honestly, it would be stupid, but at the same time, you know, I don't know. Maybe they will. DV27, here we go. It surely can't take so many months to implement a simple USD one payment integration into the system. So there's a lot to this that I've been through this before. I really think I've explained this before. It isn't just the $1 payment. It isn't just the passport, in a sense. It's all the systems that have to be adjusted for those things to have, you know, for those things to be moved through the system. This is way more complicated than some of you seem to realize, and it's way more complicated than the government realize. I could show you the response on the UK lawsuit. There's, bless her cotton socks. There's this woman, what's her name? Angelica Gutierrez, I think her name is, who is the IT leader for the government, who had to write, you know, an explanation. Let me see if I can find that. It's absolutely funny. It really is funny. Let me see if I can find that to you. Honestly, this is like, I'm in IT, right? I'm, you know, so I kind of, you know, read this thing with horror, thinking this poor woman having to sort of try and sort of say what she's saying, but, you know, like, I mean, it was just, it was, you know, it was embarrassing, really, to sort of watch this this thing sort of be written. So here's this declaration. So basically, what this is this is the motion to dismiss from in my lawsuit for the UK lawsuit, right? So it's on behalf of Jessica Paul et al. Et al. Are the other defendants, sorry, the other plaintiffs, that we added to the case afterwards. But Jessica Paul is my daughter. And I used her name and I used her persona with her agreement, obviously, because she had entered DV25. So we sued Donald Trump and other people. And frankly, this has been, I got two things this week. I got that. Can you see that? I got that. That was lovely. I got the little YouTube subscriber, plaque this week for 100,000. And I got this week, which was possibly more fun for me, was this motion to dismiss in the lawsuit against Donald Trump. I love seeing, my daughter's name in a lawsuit against Trump. I think that's, wonderful. But anyway, so yes, Angelica Gutierrez, right? She is the acting division chief visa portfolio lead in the Office of Consular Systems and Technology, CST, in the Bureau of Consular Affairs, CA, right? This is the team of IT folks that actually work on all of the systems. So if we're talking about implementing the $1 charge and the passport, this is the person who would be in charge of that team, right? We looked up her salary. Bless her. She earns $106,000. Now, people have often asked me in the past why I don't go and work for the government, why I don't work for KCC. $106,000 maybe annually. Maybe that sounds like a lot of money to you, but it wouldn't pay my bills. Not even. It wouldn't begin to scratch my bills. But I think she's probably overpaid, in all honesty, because she then says, this is an emotion where they said we did nothing wrong. This is an emotion where they said we did nothing wrong, but this is the funny bit. So I'm just going to talk about this for a moment. Sorry, this is kind of fun anyway. In fiscal year FY25, fiscal year FY26, natives of the United Kingdom and the dependent areas, excluding Northern Ireland, were eligible to participate in the DV visa program. No shit, Sherlock. As such, the department included natives of the United Kingdom in the randomization process performed by for all DV applicants for FY25 and 26. As part of the process, petitions submitted by entrants, including those native to the United Kingdom, were assigned a number in the sequence established for each of the 6 regions. Right? I've told you before. I've told you how the lottery draw process actually takes place. All the entries are all sort of jumbled up. They're all randomly, jumbled up, and every case from 1 to 1 million or 1 to 5 million, however many entries there are, every single entry is given a case number, right? And then they take the top 50,000 in the case of Europe, or the top 100,000 in the case of Africa, or whatever, and they start going through those cases and they start ejecting cases. So the first part of this actually says, and this is kind of important to some of the people in the UK lawsuit have asked me to explain how these numbers from 1 to 189,000, how those numbers got there. And I've explained this before, and this declaration, which is a sworn affidavit by the IT leader at the government office dealing with this system. They say, yes, that randomization process happened in exactly the way I've described in the past, right? And so they were assigned a number in a sequence established for each of the six regions, and there was and were then separately rank ordered at random. I mean, it's difficult for me to read because it's such awful English for a start. These people can't even speak English properly, and throw in a bit of dyslexia and bad English, and However, due to a technical oversight, entrants from the United Kingdom were initially excluded from the pool of entrants from the selections drawn in FY25 and FY26. The system was mistakenly not updated to select anyone chargeable to the United Kingdom. That's precisely what I told you had happened. And this was part of the allegation, right? So they had all those entries. Those entries were numbered in the correct numbers, but the system didn't have the switch flipped that said, yes, you can draw from the UK entries, right? Upon verification by our Consular Systems and Technology team on July 18th, 2025, our lawsuit was filed served on June 16th. Okay, so this is just over a month after, just after a month after our lawsuit, right? So, in other words, a month after our lawsuit was filed, they then checked what people had been screaming about them at them about for quite some time before that. I tried to do a FOIA request in February of that same year. Other people had written to them. I mean, all sorts of stuff we'd been trying to get them to wake up, and they hadn't woken up. But then in July 18th, randomly, a month after our lawsuit, thank you, Annie, they just suddenly they checked and they found, oh yeah, there's a problem. Immediate steps were taken to verify that no other countries were mistakenly included. We hadn't said that. This is quite funny that we did point out that they'd also mistakenly left Cuba into DV26, but we didn't suggest that other countries were mistakenly excluded, because no other countries have been added. Right? I'd already explained that in the bloody lawsuit. And it was resolved by programming the system to select an appropriate number of entrants in the regional rank order in which they have been randomly assigned in fiscal year 25-26. This is that's not correct. You didn't program the system, you stupid woman. That's not what happened. You didn't do programming at that point. Honestly, if this person was working for me, I would be ripping him a new a-hole at this point. Because don't use stupid terms you don't understand. I can promise you this person came up through the business analyst route, not programming. Anyway, so that's not a correct statement. None of that is a correct statement. It's not well worded at all, but I'll forgive her on the basis that she's an American, and therefore English is probably a second language to her. Second behind stupid. Anyway, so yeah, this is the confirmation about the UK lawsuit. But anyway, going back to your question, sir, Raju gentleman, right? When they implement a system, it's not just that they have to take the $1 payment, etc. It's that they have to go through all sorts of steps and hoops, etc. about what do you do with the $1, right? The government can't just take in money and that goes into some sort of slush fund. This is probably bad news to people in the government, but it's not just that the government takes in that money and that just like sloshes around somewhere in some petty cash account, like sits in someone's bank account or something. It has to go through a whole series of systems. It has to go in officially. That $1, which is going to be, let's say it's $15 to $20 million they collect, that money has to be controlled. It has to go into accounting systems. It has to go through audit processes and all sorts of things, right? So for every one person involved in making the change, there's probably 10 other people who've got to approve and sign off the change, because we're talking about government accounting rules, right? This is way more complicated than GAAP or any of you that know about working with financial systems. It's more complicated. It's government accounting rules, right? And so it's got to go in, into the right place. It's got to be available in the budgets. It's then got to be spent in the right way. How are we going to spend this $15 to $20 million? How do we know that Angelica Gutierrez, who only owns $106,000 a year, hasn't programmed the bloody system to take all of that $15, $20 million and put it in her personal bank account? How do we know that, right? That's all got to be verified, right? So that's just about the $1. And then the other big change is the passport thing. As well as putting the passport in, they're not just collecting the bloody passports, right? And just like, oh, let's get a passport. No, they're doing something with that information, right? They're collecting the passports and they've got that database now. They're building a database of all of these entries. They get 15, 20 million people to volunteer their passport information on an annual basis and detail who their family members are. And they can make all sorts of connections. Oh, look at who's looking at that address. Who's living at that address? Who's that person probably related to? Oh, this person over here is a likely terrorist, and it's probably related to this person who entered the DV lottery because they lived at the same address. And look, the passport number is the same as that person. Oh, interesting. I wonder if that's the same person. They've just given us their address and their names of their family. So some of you are not really understanding that this isn't just as simple as a $1 fee and passport, right? And Raju, gentlemen, I'm sorry, but you've fallen into that trap. of not really thinking through the rest of the stuff, right? When the government does stuff like this, it's complicated. Sure, it's complicated. It's more complicated than a normal company, but it's also for a reason, and it's sometimes for reasons that we're not really thinking through, right? The database of information that has been entered into the DV lottery over the last 20 years is a lot of data. Probably, you know, hundreds of millions of people have entered the lottery over the last few years, and that's valuable information. And in government declarations in lawsuits, even as early as 2012, the government made it clear that they do not plan to destroy that information. Okay, and it doesn't matter a damn what Europe says about, you know, destroying data and all that sort of thing. They're not going to destroy that information. They're going to keep that data if it suits them. And so they're building a database of information. And if you don't like that, don't enter the DV lottery. As simple as that, right? It's not required for you to enter the DV lottery. If you don't want your details to be kept in some government database or whatever, then don't enter the lottery. Quite simple, right? You don't have to do it. It's optional. But don't think for a minute that they are not using that data in some of their security techniques and, you know, and their background checking and all the other things. Don't think for a minute that that data isn't valuable. It is valuable. It's valuable data, particularly when they can couple it with other information. They're asking now for social media information and that sort of thing. When you can get all of that information together, that's very powerful information. Okay. So there you go. Nice to see you again, Simon. The embassy in Yaoundé isn't doing interviews at all for DV26. So sad. I'm AF14K, giving up already from Cameroon. When you say giving up already, I mean, you can't really give up because that could change tomorrow, right? I mean, and at 14K, AF14K, it wouldn't take long at all for them to get to your number. But I do understand the frustration. And I understand the emotional toil that is taking on many of you. There are many people suffering at the moment because the government's not doing what it should be doing, or that the embassies are not doing what they should be doing. So yeah, it's frustrating as hell. Shouldn't be like this, but it is. DV lottery is about bringing in immigrants, and Trump hates immigrants, so no way it will be open. Okay, thank you, Wazzy TV, for your insight into something you don't know anything about. Thank you. Hi, Sai. I like it when people call me Sai. Hope you good. Was asking, what is your prediction date on DV27? I don't have a prediction date, I'm afraid. I'm a DV25 winner who arrived in USA on December 25th. Cool. Happy Christmas. Zimbabwean citizen. Awesome. I have not yet received my social security number, even though I said yes to getting my social security number on the DS260. Oh, you've waited too long. So it's not too long. It's fine. You can do something about this. But the social security number, when you arrive here, is more important to you, actually, than the green card, right? And so you do need to go and fix the problem, right? It is probably that something went wrong in the application, you know, process or whatever, not through your fault, but something the government messed up, and that happens. Our government, bless their cotton socks, have always made mistakes. It's not, you know, it's not just a recent thing because of the current leadership. They've always made mistakes, and so they've made a mistake in your case. You've been here now 4 weeks and you haven't had your social security number. You have to go to the social security office near you. You can look up the website ssa.gov, and that's the department that deals with the issuance of social security numbers. And you'll have to make an appointment, probably. You might just be able to do a walk-in, but you should definitely get the address of the local social security office and plan to spend a morning or an afternoon there. You'll need to take your documentation, your passport that shows your I-551, which is the DV lottery visa that has been endorsed. Take your birth certificate. It tells you actually on ssa.gov what to take in terms of documentation. But take all of that and insist that they tell you whether you've had a social security number assigned to you or not. And if you have, tell them to tell you the number. Whether they give you the card or not is kind of irrelevant, but you need the number, right? prove who you are and everything else. And they will either say, yes, it's been produced and it was sent to this address and it went to an address that you don't know about or something like that, in which case you need a replacement card, but you also need the number, and you can tell them to tell you the number. Or they'll say, we don't have any record of you, and which means something got screwed up from the immigration side. And so you have to then apply for this social security number. I wouldn't wait at all any longer. You would normally do that after 2 to 3 weeks in America. Certainly at 4 weeks, you definitely want to do that. Something's gone wrong. Okay, go fix it. Hello, I've been selected in the DV26, but also have a Canadian citizenship. Will the ban of 75 countries affect my case, or just the pause? The 75 country thing is also a pause. There are 2 pauses and 1 ban, right? The 75 country pause and the travel ban can both be overcome through having a second citizenship and traveling on the passport of that second citizenship from a non-banned country. So in your case, since you have Canadian citizenship, as long as you also have a Canadian passport, then you can be exempt from the 75 country pause, right? And from the travel ban if you happen to be travel banned. You will not be exempted, obviously, from the DV lottery pause. But if the DV lottery pause is lifted and the 75 country pause is not lifted, you're at least exempt from the 75 country pause, right? So, so yes, because you've got that Canadian citizenship and passport, the terminology of the orders hasn't been particularly good, of course. But at one point they did say something very clearly about when traveling on the passport of the non-banned country, right? In other words, you have to have the you have to be traveling on that passport. Okay. Curtis Morrison is going to file lawsuit about DV26. Is that true? Yes, it is true. You can go to Red Eagle Law. That's all one word. Red Eagle. RedEagleLaw.com. I think it is. Oh, I should probably check that. RedEagleLaw.com. And let me just copy that. I'll put it in the chat. And you can see, you can go to the page where he's got interest lists, and he's got a link that says group lawsuits, and under group lawsuits, let me show you that. Have some of you seen Curtis before? I don't know if some of you would have seen him. Some of you may not have seen him. Bless his cotton socks. Where are we? Oh dear. Now, I just want that across there. Excuse me a minute. Let's just go back there and oh, come on. Right. And we're going to go. Oh, wow. I've done something really weird with my screen. There we go. So there's the interest lists page. But actually, for DV26, he's already got this as a group lawsuit, and he's got the case prospectus there. He's done a couple of videos, just added that. That's good. And he's got some information there about the cost to participate, how to participate. There's some frequently asked questions. Hopefully, he's adding to those to make some of those things clear. Deadline to sign up, 35 days, right? So 35 days is the deadline to sign up. I don't think you should wait for the last day. I agree with Curtis, that would be a bit silly. But around about day 28, 29, 30, I think I would be sort of probably signing up at that point. But by that time, when I say, you know, I mean like 5 days, 6 days, 7 days before the deadline to sign up. That's probably when I personally would sign up if I were interested in doing this. And I would wait until then because I'm going to know more by then, right? You know, there are the deadlines. Deadline to participate is February 28th. Filing date for the complaint, March 14th, 2026. Bear in mind, we just got a motion. Now, this was extended because of the shutdown. They added about 45 days or 55 days, I think it was. You know, there was a delay during the government shutdown of the UK lawsuit. But we have just this week got their motion to dismiss on a case that we filed in June of last year. And we essentially won in August and September of last year. I mean, this, you know, I hadn't even thought about the UK lawsuit for a little while. I actually pinged Curtis about it a few weeks ago and said, hey, shouldn't they have responded by now? But anyway, they had a deadline to respond by June 23rd, I think it was. And sure enough, like a day before the deadline, they filed this stupid motion to dismiss. It doesn't really matter at this point. We've won the lawsuit. It doesn't matter. But I feel like Curtis should have that UK lawsuit in the win column, and it should be official that it won. But it achieved everything it needed to achieve. So, it's fine. But anyway, the DV26 lawsuit is this one. Now, it does say it won't be traveling it won't be challenging the travel bans, right? And so there's some important information you have to read there. It also talks about the payment terms. It's $500 due in advance, and that money will be non-refundable after the filing date, right? And then $2,000 will be due after you enter the USA. So if the lawsuit didn't win, or if you never entered the USA, then it would only have cost you the $500. But if you enter the USA, it's going to be assumed to be because of the lawsuit, and you'll then owe this extra $2,000, which you'll pay at $250 per month. Okay, so that's the costs. It's not an insignificant amount of money, but it's not in lawsuit terms. It's not that much money, I have to say. I think he's done the best he can to make that affordable for people. So anyway, I just want to mess around with my screen. My screen's gone. Oh, that's awful. I hope I can turn that off. Okay, so I stop sharing. I should be able to put me. Oh, this has gone wacky now. There we go. I'm back. All right. So let's just jump back into the questions then, right? Very eye-opening. We are being used as data. Absolutely. Confusion. If you didn't understand that, I'm surprised. Well, perhaps we haven't discussed this before, but that's, there's lawsuits. There was information from a lawsuit in 2012. There was a mess up in the selection process in 2012. There was a big number. It was a big lawsuit at that time, and that was a very revealing, very revealing time. They released a lot of information through that. These declarations have always got good information in them, interesting information. Anyway, if you're a geek like me. Okay, anyway, let's take some questions. Hello, Simon. I'm from Uzbekistan. Is the fate of the pause DV26 easier than that of DV 2020? Yeah, DV 2020 was harder than this, and the DV 2020 fought for issuance of the visas, even though COVID meant that there were no entries allowed into the country, right? And so the ban was a really hard ban on every bit of travel, right? So during 2020, but the government took that ban and said, during that ban, we don't have to issue visas. And we said, yeah, you do. You have to issue the visas. And we won that part of the case. And 7,000 people were issued visas in September of 2020. And that was important because those people were then able to enter the country several months later in 2021, because the COVID ban was removed by that time by President Biden, right? It just happened to be that the presidency of Trump was going to end, and we made this bold assumption, which turned out to be correct, that Biden would be able to remove some of these more onerous bans, etc. And that's what actually happened, right? So in DV 2020, we won that argument, and were able to get visas issued. This DV 2026 pause is not as bad as that, in a sense. It is bad, it's arbitrary, it's awful, it should be fought, blah, blah, blah. But it's not as bad as it was then, right? Because they are doing the interviews, they are doing the DS-260 processing, they are doing the medicals and so on. They are moving the visa bulletin, although we'll see that this week, right? We'll see if they do or don't. but it's not as bad, right? So we'll have to see what their intentions really are, but only time will tell, right? Thank you, Christine. Good to see you too. Is the fate of the pause that's the question I just answered. Can I get a visa if I'm a stateless and don't come from the 75 countries visas banned? You can't. Oh man, you're mixing all sorts of things. DV27. So look, when DV27 opens, regardless of the pauses, the travel bans, or anything else, everybody can enter DV27, right? Even if you're under a travel ban, or if the 75 country pause happen to be there, or the DV lottery pause happen to be there, even if those things were in place, you could still enter DV27, right? And be selected with the assumption or the hope that those bans, pauses, and chaos will all be gone by the time DV27 processing happens, right? Hope that's clear. I thought the program is on hold. Yeah, that's the impression they would like to give. But most of the program is not on hold. They're doing scheduling, they're doing interviews, and so on. So we contacted Charles. He will file the case at the end of the pause in general, not to obtain visas for the applicants. When you say Charles, are you talking about Charles Cook? I pinged Charles Cook and asked about their intentions. I think they do intend to file a lawsuit as well. And that's another reason why people should wait. Because if you're going to be in a lawsuit, you might want to be considering, okay, what lawsuits are open to me? Do I want to participate with Curtis? Do I want to participate with Charles Cook? Where do I think my chances will be better? Whose arguments are going to be better? Whose financial terms are going to be better? That's all something you should consider. So I think it's too early for any lawsuit, but just wait a little bit is all I would say, right? Just wondering how long it will take for the 75 for the pause to be lifted, especially that the 75 countries. Yeah, we're all wondering that. We don't know, right? Okay. As an accountant, Joe says, who has worked for the government-funded entities here in the UK. Yep, extremely complicated. Yep, funds have to be allocated. Every penny accounted for is intricate. Is absolutely right, Joe. I mean, I've worked with financial systems all my life, but and there's nothing more complicated than government accounting. But it's also all the approvals. It's just sign-offs. The sign-offs are endless bullshit. You've got, just for the government to release a form, there's you can go to Reg Info and you can see all the hoops they have to jump through because they're making a small change on a form. Everything has to be signed off. And this is one thing where if Trump were a smarter person, a different person, then a lot of what he would be, his wrecking ball approach in some cases is the right thing, because the American government is now unable to sort of move quickly. And this is part of the frustration that the Trump administration have had. And, they want things to be able to move fast. And they're absolutely right. It should be able to move fast. But on things like government accounting systems, yeah, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen overnight. It's always going to be complicated, because otherwise you get money coming from God knows where. It's going God knows where. And somebody is going to raise their hand saying, hey, you didn't check with me. I was supposed to sign off on that new thing you were doing. And, it'll always get screwed up, right? So it's not just programming it. People have said to me, oh, it can't take that long to program the system. No, it doesn't take that long to program the system, but that's not the freaking point, right? I've had a fun time this week just having that sort of argument with people I work with. We're being told to do something in 9 months that, it's almost like I often say, and I get told off a lot at work when I say these things. I have to point out to people, it doesn't matter how many mums you put, you can't take 9 mums and make a baby in 1 month. Some things do take time, right? On the other hand, we got to be a little bit sensible about some of the things we do. It doesn't take 3 months to make a simple change to some systems and, implement that into production sort of thing. Some of these things that we do is just ridiculous pace, So anyway. The pause is like slow motion for the DV26. It's killing the hopes of the selectees slowly, day by day. Yeah, I get it. I understand the emotional aspect of this, but just try and understand things are happening, right? So and they wouldn't be happening if they were. If the government had their choice, they would stop the program. Absolutely, 100%. If Trump had his choice, they would stop the program, but they can't do that just on a whim. And I explained last weekend how the government works, right? You've got the Congress who make the laws, and the president and all the people that work for him are there to implement the laws. If they want to change the laws, they can try and do that by influencing Congress. But until Congress has changed the laws are the laws, right? So they can't just, they have to do things in a certain way. All right, let's take some more questions. I was selected in 2 consecutive times, AF25, AF55K, and 26 AF1K. Wow, the 1K is awesome. Transferred my first case to Addis from Nairobi, but couldn't receive 2NL. Yeah, they wouldn't have got there, right? Did my interview November 26, issued currently in MN. MN is in Minnesota, that cold place. Is it Minnesota? Wow. But congratulations. I'm glad you got there in the end. Sometimes, I don't believe in God, any God, none of the gods that some different people believe in. I believe in at least one less God than some of you. But there are some times when you see something like this, someone who got an AF55K, didn't get a chance, then gets an AF1K. I mean, is there a hand of something going on there? It seems like this guy was destined to be in America. So I hope, Jared, you get to do something important in America. What if I don't have official social media? I only rage bait. Yeah. Bless you, Simon. Keep guiding people. Thank you, Jared. Thank you for that. Have 16K Asian DV case number. However, my country, Bhutan, have been in the ban list. Is there any chances I might get an interview? You will get an interview. Now, it's a little difficult for me to keep loaded into my head which countries are affected by the 75 country pause or the travel ban or obviously the DV lottery thing, right? So without looking this up, I can't tell you off the top of my head which pauses and bans apply to Bhutan. But the general principle is this: you will be offered an interview. And if your number is current and your DS-260 is processed and your embassy is taking cases, you can get an interview. Being offered an interview does not mean that you're going to be given the visa. Okay, be careful. If you're under the travel ban, that's pretty much, I don't think you should be going to the interview, in my opinion, if you're under the travel ban. If you're under the 75 country pause and obviously the DV lottery pause, I personally would still attend the interview because I believe the pauses will be lifted at some point. And in my opinion, certainly before the end of September 30th, 2026, right? So visas will be issued. But the later it is, the more important it will have been that you attended your interview, because when they have to start issuing visas to people at the end of the pauses, that's going to be a bit of a chaotic time because all of the people's visas will need to be reallocated, and there may be some delays. We don't know what it's going to be like, but I don't want to be in a position where it gets so late that there's too much chaos going on and you didn't attend your interview and you try and rearrange your interview. And you find that there are no spaces because everyone's trying to do their interview. And, I don't want you to be in that position. So I personally would recommend you attend the interview. If you can, delay the medical because that's an important cost. But, but personally, I would attend the interview if you're only affected by one of the 2 pauses, the 75 country pause and the DV lottery pause. Okay. We are 6 months into the first VB for DV27, if at all. Well, or what? Yeah. Yeah, no sign for the program commencing, but keep hope alive. Yeah. Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, they're leaving it very, very late. It's critically late right now. They're already in a position where they're going to be affecting the CSPA. and reducing the length of time that people are protected under the CSPA. That's a problem. That's probably going to be some lawsuits coming because their inaction on starting DV27 will necessarily reduce the amount of protection that someone has when their child is turning 21. And somebody probably is going to say, hang on a minute, your stupidity, your inaction cost us a green card for our kid. And somebody probably will sue about that. It's a lawsuit waiting to happen. We'll see. Hi, Si. My number is OC1290. On the CEAC data site, I see graphs showing 1201 to 1301 range showing 53% at MVC and 47% as a whole. What is the whole? What happens to a whole number from earlier range? Right. So the wholes are cases that were disqualified during the draw process prior to the announcement of the results, right? And so in Oceania region, we see that, yes, it's roughly 50-50. So 50% of the cases are disqualified prior to them announcing the results. So you got, let's say, case number 1 through 5. Case number 1 is a real case. Case number 2 is a whole. Case number 3 is a real case. Case number 4 is a whole. And those holes, the holes, are cases where they had a bad photograph or something like that, or they were fraudulent entry, or possibly from a country that was not eligible to participate, right? So in DV25 and 26, for a while, those numbers that were actually UK entries were holes because those numbers had not been selected. They were rejected during the draw process. They were numbered, but not selected, not told that they were winners, right? And then our lawsuit came along, and so they flipped the switch and took those UK cases, and those holes turned into real cases, right? So you can sort of see the sort of things that would cause cases to be holes. So between 1201 and 1301, there's probably, only half of those are real cases. And not all of those cases will have submitted their DS260s. Some people don't ever respond. They don't find out that they're a winner, or they decide, well, I didn't really mean to enter the lottery. I just did it for fun, but I'm not interested in going to America, so I'm not going to go through the process. So even in a case, in a chunk of 100 cases, doesn't mean you've got 100 cases really in front of you. You've probably got 50 cases, and of the 50 cases, maybe only 40 cases actually have even submitted the DS260. So that's how it works. Greetings from Nepal. The new form I-954 rules may be applied to reduce the use of public benefits. Maybe. People are already talking about this I-945. The way some of you behave is hilarious. The government have now suggested this new I-945 form. It's a reawakening of an old form. But it's in a question, it's in a public discussion period. So it's not a rule yet. It may become a rule. It's quite likely to become a rule. But right now, it's not even a rule. And it's only a USCIS form as well. So, it doesn't really affect any cases today. So there's no real point discussing it today. But so some of you are aware, yes, there is something coming from that new discussion, which would be probably one of the things that would be, a solution to the 75 country ban. Pause. I do it myself. The 75 countries are paused partly because of public charge concerns. The I-945 form is, it's basically a bond. They're suggesting they're going to collect some sort of bond, maybe $1,000, $2,000, $5,000. I don't know what it will be, right? But it'll be some sort of financial bond that will be held for some period of time, yet to be decided how long that will be, so that you won't use federal public benefits, right? Welfare programs, things like SNAP, things like Medicaid, that sort of thing, right? And if you relinquished your green card at some point, then you would get that money back. If after some time you haven't used those benefits, you'll probably get that money back. But this is going to be a sort of a suggested solution. It's not necessarily, it's not guaranteed to be implemented that way, but it's likely to. I think it's probably likely to come over the next few months or the next couple of years, but it's not there yet. So, don't worry about it at this point. To be perfectly honest, if that's what it takes, if, for example, you could put $1,000 bond in place, and that's what it took to get the program back on track, as it were, and that would make everyone happy, and they would be happy about immigration again because they got financial bond. If that's what it took to get America to be okay with immigration happening, I'd kind of be okay with that, right? But it depends on what the details of the process would be. When you get the money back, how much the money is the money paid per person or per family or whatever? We'd have to hear all the details, right? I've heard that the DV lottery will be stopped, if ever, and replaced with immigration system like Canada. Yeah, I mean, I've heard lots of things. I heard that there was an elephant that flew by my house earlier and crapped in my backyard. But no. I don't know. Eventually, they will reform immigration. Yes. Eventually, they will do that, but it takes a while. And this government is very fractured right now, very detached from reality, very unpopular in America. And the political strength is just not there to push through, significant reforms to immigration or anything else. They're just in a mess right now because it's such a comedy show, I had my interview in November, but my case went to AP because of military service. Can I assume I will be getting my visa among the first ones when pause will be lifted in the near future? I don't know. I don't know anything about your case. I don't know whether your military service AP has been resolved or not. So I wouldn't make an assumption if I were you. I think you just have to wait and see. Okay. Hello, Simon. Even I said my DS260, I don't want SSN issued, and they did create it automatically for me, and not for my wife. We just went to the SSA office. Yeah, they screw things up sometimes. Yeah, it's amazing. So the DV lottery is done. The dream for some many people. Edmund Chege. I don't know how to get through to some people. Some people, it's like they hear the words, but the words don't really make any sense in the head, and instead crap comes out of their mouth. Sort of like, it's like the words have got mixed up in your head, Edmund. Sorry about that, but you're saying crap. You're not really paying attention. Maybe you should go and have a cup of tea. Hi, Simon. To the point you made, that EU has to move to show intent of lifting the pause. Shouldn't that have already happened in the last VB? I understand that they were pretty much up to 11K. Not really. So there's more movement tracked. You can backtrack in the DV charts. You can see when we saw that movement. Some embassies, yes, would have gone to 11K, but now there's quite a lot of embassies, right? No, I mean, I was surprised when they didn't move the VB last, for Europe last VB. But I think if they did it twice in a row, that would be a bigger problem, right? So you can take the perspective that it's happened once already if you want. We'll wait and see. Okay, partly we're the data being missing is really unfortunate. We don't really have an idea of how many cases are being issued. Well, none are being issued right now, but how many cases are hitting 221G and that sort of thing. We would be in much better shape if we understood which embassies were working, which are not working. But some embassies are working well. Ankara, for example, is working very well. And that's the first time in years. So that's making a huge difference in Europe, just that one embassy. So, yeah. Also, we entered as DV25 winner in December 25, got our green cards this week. I was scared because of the pause, just wanted to let people know. Yeah, massive million. It's interesting, you got the green cards this week. There was some rumor or suggestion or statement by Kristi Noem that they would not be sending out green cards. And they seem to be sending out green cards, but I think Curtis may want proof of that at some point. I'm not sure, but I think he's got some sort of lawsuit which is challenging that. So the fact that you got your green cards after a December 25 entry, that's kind of good news. It means they are sending out. Because by December 25, the Kristi Noem statement saying that they weren't going to be sending green cards, that was already stated, right, by December 25th. And so if you've got your green card, that just shows that what Kristi Noem said and what her stupid assistant, what's her name, Trisha something or other, what she said was complete nonsense, both of them. I received my green slip on December 18th. My visa and the passport was cancelled without prejudice. The embassy will probably call me again. Yeah, that's what they would do. So when they've given you your passport back with the visa cancelled without prejudice, when the pause is lifted, they'll have to contact you again. They'll have to reissue that visa. I mean, it's more work for them. They don't want to do all of that, but they'll have to do that. Okay. Yeah, so good. You're all paying attention. I'm behind, obviously, in the comments, but yes, you're realizing the import of what Massimilian just said. I'm a Kenyan DV26, DV selectee, current, but no 2NL yet. Any hope or progress report? Well, keep waiting. Fingers crossed for you. Okay. I'm a Peruvian man looking for apply DV27. It has started, still undetermined, postponed. The date has not been published yet. My case, as I said, is an AP since November. If I decide to join the lawsuit and the lawsuit wins, can that affect my AP to be processed quickly? No, AP takes as long as AP takes. Lawsuits don't speed up normal processing, right? So if the government, for example, says, no, we've got to do background checks, and those background checks are not done, then the lawsuit isn't going to help you. On that point, I mean, it might help you, but it wouldn't help you sort of go faster. I mean, I should be a little bit cautious with that statement, I suppose, because if Curtis were sitting next to me, he'd be shouting at me already, I'm sure. There are things called mandamus lawsuits, which is where you take the government's procedures and you say, hey, you're not playing by your own rules. You're not doing something that you state you should do. You should be adjudicating this case, and you're supposed to have done that within a certain amount of timeline and so on. Now, there is that aspect. So sometimes lawsuits can force the government to do something. And judges will enforce that when it's unreasonable. But it is reasonable to do background checks. And since November, that's not an unreasonable amount of time, So, but Morrison said people would be refunded if the pause is lifted before the lawsuit. So registration time does not matter. I still wouldn't sign up to it. Why would you? I don't know. You're a smart enough person, you can figure that out, right? Why would you sign up earlier than the last week, even knowing that the amount would be refunded and so on? Why would you do that, right? What's the advantage of signing up now, today? With 35 days to go, what's the advantage? What do I know there's the offer of a refund if you withdraw prior to the filing date. That's good. That's a good offer. I think it removes a lot of my objections about the lawsuit in a sense. However, what's the advantage being offered? There is no advantage being offered to sign up today, 35 days before the lawsuit. What's the advantage? There's none. So, so yeah, you just use your brain, really. Hi, Simon. How are you? I'm under 75 countries because of the pause. I'm a DV lottery winner, AF33. If the pause is lifted, will I be able to receive 2NL? So the tricky thing here is that almost nobody at your case number has received an interview anywhere in Africa, right? So you have to consider which embassy am I at, and how quickly can they get to my number. You have to consider that as well. It's not just about your case number. It's about the embassy performance as well, how much capacity they're giving. And unfortunately, we don't have good information about that right now because of the CEAC data being missing, essentially. We don't have that. So it's, it's tricky. Be careful about that. What's your piece of advice? Do you recommend or encourage DV26 to participate in the Curtis lawsuit? I think I've explained that pretty well. Watching live from Liberia, I win AF 39232. Until now, not heard anything about our case or interview. Yep, as I explained, nobody in Africa has been scheduled at that level, even though you're current, right? Hi, Simon. I'm late filling my DS260 and it's not processed yet. I'm AF 3000. Do you think they will give me priority scheduling my interview, or will they run out of visas by the time you get to NL? They won't run out of visas at all this year. They're not going to run out of visas. The problem we're going to have is more, that they won't issue all the visas, right? We got 52,000 visas. And unless something drastically changes in terms of the speed of processing in Africa in particular and other regions, we're not going to get anywhere close to 52,000. So don't worry about visas running out. That's just a non-thing this year, right? Forget that. Visas on a global basis will not be running out in DV26. You can be sure of that. The way that you will get priority, you get a little bit of a priority, right? So you submitted your DS260, and every month the government looks at all the cases that are already current, and they put them into a queue of cases at the embassy, right? For each embassy, they do this. And when they put those cases into the queue, it's the cases that have just been processed. The DS260 has been processed, even though the case number was low, like yours. Your DS260 was just processed, and so now you're eligible to be put into that queue. Similarly, higher case numbers that just became current, where their DS260 was processed ages ago, they're going into the queue. But as they go into that queue, those cases are numbered in case number order. So your 3000 case will jump ahead of someone whose DS260 was processed before yours, but their case number is higher than yours, right? So yes, you're getting that priority. However, you don't jump in front of people who were put into the AV queue the month before yours or from months before yours, right? You don't get to go in front of those people because it's a once a month process or an add to the queue. I created a video that explains exactly how and why that works. It's a pretty good video. I got little beads and things that go onto a string. It's kind of fun to watch, and it explains exactly precisely how the queues work and why case number order is still respected. But still, that does mean some higher case numbers will go before lower case numbers just because of the way it works. And if you don't understand that, watch my video and it should become clear. Okay. Hi, Simon. I hope you're doing fine. What's your opinion about CSB, Casablanca Embassy in Morocco? There have been 6 VB and highest case number they have released is 507. My case number is 24,4XX, 24,000 something. Yeah, it's a problem, right? CSB has got massive capacity. They can move very, very quickly through numbers if they want to. The question is, do they want to? The question is, why haven't they done so already, right? And I don't know those answers. I don't know if they want to. I don't know why they haven't done so already. I don't know. Nobody at the embassy is talking to me and saying, hey, Britt Simon, here's what we were too busy, Nobody's talked to me about it, right? So I don't know what's going on at the embassy. I don't know whether they intend to fix the problem. I can tell you that if they do intend to fix the problem, they could get to your case number pretty easily. But because they can schedule hundreds of cases a month if they want to. The question is, do they want to? Or will they, right? We'll have to see. Can a DV26 lawsuit argue the bad performance of embassies? Not really. No, we've tried that in lawsuits before. I mean, definitely you can ask the lawyers about that, right? See if they've got any novel strategies for any new strategies for attacking embassy performance. But in the past, the government have managed to successfully argue that the embassies are able to determine their own capacity, their own restrictions on capacity, their own prioritization and everything else. And all the judges have gone along with that idea. They've all said, yeah, fair enough. The embassies are up to, they are entitled to decide what they can take, how many cases they can take, which cases they should prioritize, because only they know the local conditions, only they know local staffing, only they know what's going on. So it isn't really possible, it hasn't worked so far anyway, put it like that, for us to sue any embassy to say, you're not doing enough work, we want you to do more work. And we've tried lawsuits like that, but it hasn't worked. We had a bit of a win in Sydney, funny enough, some years ago. Can't remember exactly the year. Was it DV21 or DV22? I can't remember. But Sydney Embassy was in the middle of moving. And this was sort of during COVID time. So I guess it was DV21 probably. It was sort of during COVID times. And so they had said they were closing the office and they were moving to a new office, but the new office was delayed in opening. And during that time, Sydney office just said, what do you know? We don't have an office. We can't do any work. There's nothing we can do about it. And you can't, what do you know? Who'd have thunk it? And so Sydney Embassy just refused to do anything. Unfreaking believable. And they were totally brazen about it. They were totally, unapologetic. It's just like, unforeseen circumstances mean that we can't open the office. And I'm like, go to a park, get a park bench, and do the interviews. Rent a hotel room, do the interviews. Like rent a little office, do something, you bunch of morons. And but it doesn't matter how much I scream and shout, obviously. And so we tried to do something, and we tried to launch a little lawsuit. And Jesse Bless attacked that particular thing. And a funny thing happened. Fiji Embassy stood up and said, "Hey, we'll help." Right? They got to hear about the lawsuit, I believe. And so, although we didn't get a direct win with Sydney Embassy, we got a neighboring embassy who stood up and said, we'll help, Suva Embassy. And they went above and beyond everything you can imagine. And it was relatively easy for people to get over to Suva. And so a lot of cases got scheduled and interviewed there in that year because Suva was superb. They really helped. And they only did that, frankly, because of the lawsuit. And they could see that we were right. We were absolutely right to attack it. And it was only, I think it was about 15 people I helped Jesse put that lawsuit together in terms of the participants. It was a small number of people, but it was important, and it caused a lot of people to be helped by the Suva Embassy. So, you can get some things done, but not through a judge saying, hey, Embassy XYZ, you've got to do this. No judge has ever said that. Hi, Simon. Is it possible to change the country of eligibility due to the pause in the application for DV27, even though I used that country in previous years? Change the country of eligibility due to the pause. Trying to figure out what you're thinking. You can't change the country of eligibility, but you can be exempted from the 75 country pause and the 39 country travel ban if you've got a second citizenship and second passport that from a country that's not banned. So you can do that. Is that what you're thinking? But no, you don't change the country of eligibility. The country of eligibility for 99% of people is the country where they were born. And that doesn't change, obviously, right? And it's only one place where you were born, right? So, yeah. Hi, I'm a software engineer, but I don't have 2 years of training. But I have 6 years of experience. Can I apply through professional because they ask for 2 years of training? You can apply through professional work experience, yes. The way the law is worded for that is that they say you need 2 years of experience in the past 5 years doing a job where that job normally requires 2 years of training prior to that or experience to do that job, right? However, the 2 years of training is not part of the requirement. So you've just got to show that you've been doing a job where that job normally requires 2 years of training or experience to do that job, which if you're a software engineer, you've done. And you've got 6 years of experience, and I presume that 6 years is all in the last 5 years, right? When you go for interview. And so, yeah, you'll be okay. You can do that. But you do have to prove it. You have to show that that really is the job you've been doing, okay? Has the silver button arrived yet? Yes, it has. There we go. Look at that. Where's my camera? It says, there you go. Britt Simon for passing 100,000 subscribers. So, yeah, I was excited about that. Like I say, it was the second most exciting thing that happened this week for me. But yeah, I was very excited about that the other day. Even my daughter thinks I'm cool. And that, I got a 17-year-old daughter. She doesn't think I'm cool for anything, right? But the fact that I've got that little button, I'm suddenly cool. Who knew? Congrats on YouTube, Shiv. About time. You always take everything to a whole new level, as always. Thank you. Yes, I appreciate your kind words. Is it possible to change a car? We've already done that one. What about the interview? You mentioned him, Morrison. He's still planning to do it. I would still like to do it. I've pinged him. Let me just check. I pinged him and he's kind of blanked me. Curtis, why are you blanking me? I think I kind of upset him this week. Curtis and I have gone back and forth with arguing with like a couple of little children sometimes. It's my fault. He did reach out. So I said, yeah, let's get together, let's do a thing. And he says he's been trying to get over the flu. He's been sick recently. Hate being on video when I look like near death. Curtis is a very good looking guy. He takes care about his appearance, and he cares about that. I wouldn't care. So yeah, he will do it. We just have to arrange it. I'm looking forward to talking about this DV lawsuit, though, because it's more confusing than most litigation, because some CEACs face 3 obstacles, some 2, some just 1. Yeah, good point. I think I can help sort of clarify that a little bit, with Curtis. But yeah, so we still will do. I believe it's good for Curtis. So he'll want to do this, and I have a fairly big following, obviously. And Curtis in the past has benefited from, from my publicizing his lawsuits, right? Now, I don't work for Curtis, so I think people need to understand that. A lot of people ask me questions about the lawsuit as if I'm Curtis, right? Or I work for Curtis, or I work with Curtis. None of that is true. I'm not a lawyer. I don't work with Curtis or any other law firm. When I publicize a lawsuit, I'm going to be honest about it, perfectly frankly. If I think it's a good idea or a bad idea, I'm going to be blunt about it. And, not all lawyers want to hear that. So, it'll be up to Curtis as to whether he's, whether he's okay with that. But I will publicize it because I think people need to know, right? But whether people participate or not, it's up to them. I can't say anything more than that. But I will give opinions about whether people should participate. And in general, lawsuits have been effective in the past. In general, there's a time and a place for a lawsuit. When I wanted to file a lawsuit for the UK government, I chose to work with Curtis, and it worked very well for us both. I got no problems with Curtis at all in terms of his fighting DV lottery cases, which he does very well. He's been doing this since 2020. He's been involved in lawsuits about DV lottery multiple times, right? So he's got some good experience. He's got a sort of a pessimistic view about how the government behave. That's where he and I sort of differ a little bit. But he's a lawyer. He has to have a pessimistic view about how the government behave. That's literally his livelihood, right? If the government behaved properly, then there would be no need for immigration lawyers. The government don't behave properly, and therefore there are immigration lawyers, right? That's basically it. If the government would just behave properly, and not make the processes so complicated and everything else, there would literally be no more immigration lawyers, right? Because they'd have a very simple process where you could just be honest with the government, and you would be treated fairly, and everything would be lovely, right? But that isn't the reality, and it's not the reality under any administration, let alone this particular administration. So there is a good reason why lawyers exist. Okay. It will be a beautiful day when I get my DV for 26. Yes, it will. I get a green card by DV 2020. I apply now for M400 since 200 days. And no update. Is there any issue for getting interview or something? Yeah, there's a general sort of delay on citizenship things. They're cancelling citizenship. Just relax. You'll get there in the end. It's kind of frustrating. In fact, I've heard of some people getting very fast processing. But right now, yeah, you can expect there's going to be some sort of odd delays in various aspects of the system. So just be patient. Be patient. During my 5 years, I've traveled several times. Like traveling, it'll be an issue. We travel like 10 times out of the USA each trip for a couple of weeks or a maximum 2 months. So then you didn't trigger the reset of the time. You'll be fine. There is a formula. There are some rules. I don't go into the N400 rules very much. The naturalization process, I went through it myself, but my own case was very simple. So I did it myself, didn't use any lawyers or whatever. But I hadn't been out of the country very often at all. I was, playing by the rules, etc. So it was pretty easy. So I don't know that much about the N400 process, but be patient, okay? Hi, Simon. I believe it will only be those who will participate in the lawsuit will benefit, right? Okay, let's talk about this a little bit. So there is always a bit of a question whether named plaintiffs in a lawsuit will benefit from a lawsuit or whether other people will benefit, right? And so you have to sort of apply a little bit of thinking. And we've seen both situations happen. We've seen some results that only came for named plaintiffs, where named plaintiffs were treated differently to other people. And we've seen other cases where named plaintiffs got a benefit, but to be fair, everybody got a benefit, whether they were named or not on the lawsuit. In other words, whether they were paying plaintiffs or not, right? Now, in the UK lawsuit, for example, exactly what I hoped would happen did happen. The lawsuit was on behalf of my one, my child, my daughter, my adult daughter who lives in the UK. The lawsuit was on behalf of her initially, and only her. Nobody else was included in the lawsuit. Later on, we added another 11 people or so, 11 or 12 people who kindly agreed to be plaintiffs on the lawsuit. But in reality, in DV25, about 100 people found themselves being selected through the DV25 situation because the problem that I was trying to address got fixed, right? And in DV26, same thing, 1,303 selectees have been selected. Now, they're not all going to get the green card for sure. Not all 103 people in DV25 got the green card either. But they all got, a chance, right? Even though none of those people were named on the lawsuits. So lawsuits can help people who are not on the lawsuit. That's the principle I'm trying to explain. And we've got very recent experience, even in the UK lawsuit, which shows exactly that, which was a Curtis Morrison lawsuit. So it is not correct, in my opinion, to say that there is going to be no benefit for people who are not plaintiffs on the lawsuit. That might happen, though, right? We might get into a situation, I think it's very, very unlikely, but we might get into a situation where plaintiffs are given some sort of preference. And if you're worried about that, then you are entitled to participate in the lawsuit. Okay, you've got to make that choice. But some people, in my opinion, will probably benefit even though they're not plaintiffs on the lawsuit. That is what I think will happen in the pause lawsuits. Okay, now You can decide for yourself which is more likely to happen. And I could be wrong on that. Absolutely, 100%. I could be wrong on that. So, you know, I've got no way of guaranteeing that. So if you're worried about that, and if you're the sort of person that later on will say, well, Simon, you said that I would benefit, and that's why I didn't participate in the lawsuit. If you're that sort of person, then spend your $500 freaking dollars and don't come to me later when you're all pissed off that you'd spent $500 or whatever, right? I don't want to hear it from anybody who says, Simon, you said. I don't want to hear it, right? You've got to make your own decisions for yourselves, right? You're all adults. I did have someone, gentleman called Eddie, who recently criticized me for stuff that he had done because of stuff I had said, and said that I said it in such an official way, it made it sound like that it was official information, right? Now, at first, I don't even know what the hell he's talking about, because I don't know what he's talking about. But you know, but frankly, that's a very childish and disrespectful way to behave towards someone who you haven't employed. None of you have employed me, right? I don't work for any of you. You know, you are adults. You can listen to what I say, and you can ignore it, and you can do your own thing. I'm just a talking head, right? That's all I am. I'm just a YouTuber as far as you're concerned. That's all I am, right? So I'm giving you my opinions. Sometimes my opinions will be correct. Sometimes they'll be incorrect. And so, you know, but I can, all I can do is point out evidence that I see is accurate evidence. It is not accurate to say that only plaintiffs benefit from lawsuits, etc. Sometimes non-plaintiffs benefit as well. Okay, and I've just proven why. The UK lawsuit is an example of that. And in DV 2020, we had an example of that. We had a massive example of that. The Gomez lawsuit, the main lawsuit, had, I think it was 11 named plaintiffs, or less than that, maybe 7. And thousands of people benefited from that, some of whom were also in private lawsuits, but not everybody was in private lawsuits. Okay, so some of them were in other lawsuits with Curtis Morrison, with the Impact litigation team, and so on. But the Gomez lawsuit covered everybody, right? Because they achieved a class and were able to cover everybody. And that was the point of it. That's how it was designed to work, and it's how it did work. So, you know, so you can figure that out for your own, decide what you want to do for yourself. And, you know, if you're worried about spending $500 or, you know, $2,500 or whatever it is, that's up to you. But it's your money. You pay your money. You take the choice. You decide whether you want to participate or not. It's up to you. Okay. Upcoming VB, will they increase the case number for Nepal? I think so, but I can't be 100% sure. Hi, Simon. I listed my social media accounts on DS260, but forgot to add my YouTube and Snapchat account, mainly because I rarely use them. If you've not been scheduled yet, if you're not AV yet, I would unlock and add that personally. I would unlock and add it. Not always active on there until now, that I'm following up DV News. Will that affect my visa in any way? Shouldn't, Marie, but I would still update it. Okay. I won the DV26 EU12K. I already have my social security number from my time in the US under J1 visa 10 years ago. Will I get to keep the same social security number? Yes, you will. It's the same number, but what you'll do is you'll go to the social security office and you'll have your card reprinted, because it probably says on there something like not authorized to work on your original card. So it's important you let them know that you're now work authorized. So you will, but you'll keep the same number. Same question. Hi, Britt. It says Nadia. How you doing? Nadia Rocio Arevalo. That sounds like an interesting name. Hello, Simon. I'm from Kenya, and I did my interview on 19th of December. I was approved, but the pause affected me immediately. They returned my passport after 3 weeks after the pause is lifted. Yeah. After the pause is lifted, will they ask back for the passport? Yes, they will. Simon, you're doing a good job by sharing insight that are useful. Thank you. Thank you, Nadia. Greetings, says Nadia. Guatemala in the 75, case number below 4,500. Well, in South America, everybody's got a case number under 4,500. Deeply appreciate your point of view. Great. Thank you. Great channel. Thank you, Nadia. when you take a photo, Nadia, try and stand in front of the camera, right? Don't take a photo like that for DV Lottery, please. I'm just looking at your profile photo there. It looks like the camera missed. It's like me doing this. I'm just being silly, of course. I've already completed my interview and received my green slip, but my visa is on hold. On the CEAC chart, my case number is showing as a whole. Why? It's showing as a whole because you have to put, you could go into CEAC yourself and type in your details, including your passport number and your name, and you would be able to see your status. But it's a hole in the DV charts site because we're not able to access it. We don't know your passport number and your name, and therefore we can't take your details. That's why it's showing as a whole. Okay. Okay, have I got any chance to finish the questions? Let me just see. I've been talking for a long time. Let me just quickly see if I can go through here. At what point, this is a good question, at what point does DV27 become cancelled in practice if not on paper, owing to the government running down the clock? Long time from now, right? In theory, they could do some sort of modified version. Basically, the DV27 interviews have to happen in the window of time between October 1st, 2026 and September 30th, 2027, right? Has to happen within that time. But there is no law that says they have to do an interview on October the 1st, 2026, right? There is no law like that. So the period of time is set and can't be changed, and that has to happen. And they have to do a draw process each year, and that should happen in the year before the process actually starts. But theoretically, they could push the DV entry period quite late. Now, it would have impacts for sure, but they could push it quite late, and they could still operate within that 1 year time frame, right? I don't know of a specific date where that becomes actually incorrect, right? And I have to be careful with how I word that because they will already have affected certain things in the DV lottery process and the law by the delay that they've already caused, right? They already will have less time to do the background checking. That's a problem. They will already have affected CSPA deadlines and dates and so on, and that's a problem. That's a very big problem. They are probably into the time where they can't do enough DS260 processing in time to actually have October interviews. They're probably already getting to that point, frankly. So, you know, I don't expect this to go on very, very much longer. I do expect DV27 to be announced soon. But when's the actual date where it would become like de facto done? You know, I don't know. That's quite some time from now. It's almost impossible to imagine us breaching that point. Okay. How much time will the court take? Months. It could take months for a lawsuit. It's not going to be quick. It's not like you file a lawsuit on March 14th and on March 15th, they suddenly say, hey, you won. It won't be like that. It will be at least a month after that for the government to respond. They'll have a period of time to respond. The filing date actually will be March 14th, but the serving date will be a few days later than that, and they'll have 30 days after the serving date. So it's going to be April before they have even to respond. They might do something about it before they respond. They might say, okay, we'll lift the pause then. And that might be because of the lawsuit, or it might be because they were going to lift the pause anyway, right? We won't really know if they do that. So really you're saying, when will the court make a decision that forces the government to lift the pause? And that is going to be a long time. That's not going to be a quick thing. Uncle B, please get yourself up to post more advice for immigrant videos. They're extremely educational and entertaining. Yeah, sorry. I know exactly what you mean. Confusion. I should do. I will do. I promise. Egypt finished their 7% quota last year. Some people's interviews were cancelled. So I'm worried if the pause is lifted, are they going to issue visa based on case numbers lowest to highest, or will it be random? Don't know. Good question, but I don't know the answer.
Hopefully it will be in the order of people's interviews and approvals, but I don't really know. Interesting point. I'll have to wait and see. Hello again. If I remember correctly, you said that you were going to discuss publicly some aspects with the lawyer. Do you mind to share it if it will pertain to the 75 pause, 26 pause, or the 27 pause? What I'd said was I was going to talk about this with Curtis Morrison, and as I understand it, although I'd want to clarify this, he's going to attack all three of those things in his lawsuit. He is not happy about the DV27 pause. He's not happy about the pause on DV26, and wants to attack the 75 country pause as well. And all of that is included in his DV lottery suit. He's got a separate lawsuit which is filing early February on the 75 country pause, and that actually may have some impact, right? That could have impact earlier than the DV lottery pause. But you can't be in the 75 country pause lawsuit on your own, on its own, if you're a DV lottery candidate. You have to be in the DV lottery case, and for that reason, the DV lottery case will challenge the 75 country pause as well. The arguments are the same arguments between both those lawsuits, but yeah, it's all going to go that way. And yes, so I just have to set up a time with Curtis if he's well enough, and we'll do a live question and answer session. I'll try and be fair, but blunt with him. Quite honestly, that's what I would intend to do. Many people have had their interviews scheduled and are completing medicals, and everyone has already spent money. Correct. What do you think? What do you think? Could the government permanently close this? No. So you're exactly going to the same place that I've gone to in my mind, which is I don't believe the government are that stupid or cruel that they would have people do medicals and interviews if they thought this pause was going to be permanent. I don't think they would do that. I mean, call me naive if you like, and Curtis right now is in his head thinking I'm naive, but I don't think they would do that. You know, are you aware of cases being accepted by USCIS after the pause? Accepted, yes. Processed, yes. But not issued. No cases issued that I know of. How can we know whether AP cases that started before the pause are still being processed behind the scenes? You can't know that, but I can tell you they are. You can't know that for sure, but it is happening, I'm sure. Hi, Simon, one of your top followers. Hope everything will goes well. Fingers crossed. Thank you, Isaac. How are you? We have an interview at US Embassy France on February 10th. KCC letter, but no appointment in US visa website for DS-160. Do you think I call the embassy? No. Damien, you don't need a DS-160 appointment because you're not doing a DS-160 case. You don't need, yours is a DS-260, right? You're doing an immigrant case, not a DS-160. All you have to do in the US visa website is register your case with them. You don't need to book an appointment with them. You already have an appointment. So you don't need an appointment, Damien. Just, you know, don't worry about the website. That's not so important, right? My embassy is Abu Dhabi, Uncle Simon, but God's hand is upon us, is upon. We still have hope, be blessed, and may your pockets never lack anything. That's an interesting, my pockets don't lack anything. Yeah, that's true. Thank you. Marius, hi Simon. Since there are 75 countries paused, that means they won't send 2NLs again until the 2 pauses are lifted. No, that's not correct. They are sending 2NLs. They're sending 2NLs. And so that's kind of evidence that they're doing all of the interviews. They're sending 2NLs. So, you know, they're doing all of the work. They just aren't issuing the visas. Can an 8 months pregnant lady travel to the US under DV? I would suggest that's probably not a good idea. You know, if you're 8 months pregnant, you need at least a doctor's letter to be able to get onto the plane. The airline won't let you board unless if you're obviously pregnant. And at 8 months, you obviously are obviously pregnant. They won't let you board unless you've got a doctor's letter saying you're safe to travel on the airline. They don't want you having a baby halfway across the Atlantic. And so it's not to do with whether it's, DV or not. It's not to do with DV. It's to do with airline rules and sensible ones. Can you not just wait a few weeks till the baby is born and then travel with the baby? I know some people think that having a baby is some sort of condition that stops you from doing anything, but actually mums are amazingly strong and can do all sorts of things just after they've had a baby. It is true that in some countries cesarean section is more common, and mums going through C-section probably are a little bit more limited in their mobility, right? They can't lift objects and everything else, but they can still do stuff. They can go to interviews, they can go to airlines, they're still they're strong people. Women are strong people. We can trust them to be able to do things. And dads, guess what? You can carry babies. It's like I've done this. I've had kids myself. I've carried babies before. You can help your wives out. You don't have to sort of worry about your wife being a delicate thing. She's fine. You just have to be a bit more helpful, frankly. Hi, Simon. In a 75 country list, case under 4,500, still a chance? Yeah, there's still a chance. They're still setting up interviews, Nadia. So, yeah, you got a chance still. Top British humor, yeah, that's me. If everything goes well, I will move to Northern California, so I'll call you and we'll have coffee together. I look forward to it. That'd be awesome. Nadia, which country? I think she said Guatemala already. Ludmilla, is crowdfunding like GoFundMe considered to be a public charge for a green card holder through DV lottery? Will it be an issue during the citizenship interview? No, not at all. Now, what are you doing a GoFundMe? Are you saying you're contributing to a GoFundMe, or you're setting up a GoFundMe for people to help you? Like, what are you doing? In general, though, public charge does mean that as a new immigrant, you shouldn't be relying on other people's help. Now, it's one thing to have a group of friends support you in some way. That's fine. But you shouldn't be relying on federal assistance in any way. That's actually not supposed to be happening at all. You're supposed to have a good plan that means you won't have to do that, right? Nadia, that wink at the end for sure increases your chances. Absolutely. Hi, Simon. I got my 2NL 2 weeks ago. Now trying to schedule my visa appointment, but the system says not scheduled. What can I do? Just attend on the date that you've been told to attend. Just you create an account with these online systems. You just create an account. You're not looking to get an appointment from that system. You've got an appointment already. Just attend on that day. Hi, Simon. From a country that is not 75 countries, but from partial ban country. I'm 25, AF23K. I'm confused. If 75 countries, if the ban on these 75, do I stand a chance? Or is to wait for my country? Right. When you say you're on the partial ban, you're talking about the travel ban, which is 39 countries, of which some of them are on a partial ban. The partial ban is a full ban for DV lottery and any other immigrant cases. It's not just because it's DV lottery, it's immigrant cases. All of the bans for the 39 countries under the travel ban, which is the 212F travel ban, all of those countries are banned for DV lottery cases and all immigrant cases. And you will not get a visa if you're from one of those countries. It doesn't matter if the 75 country pause or the DV lottery pause is lifted, you still won't get a visa because that travel ban is in effect. And I don't think that travel ban is going anywhere for the time being. I don't think Trump is going to remove that for the time being. So if you are affected by the travel ban, I personally would not, I would not attempt the interview. Okay. Hi, Simon. Sorry, missed the first 30 minutes. Q1, question 1. Got MedCheck in November. And firstly, how did you miss the first 30 minutes? Did you not get the announcement? I'm a bit confused and worried about that. You got to attend. Got MedCheck in November and interviewed late December. Now on hold for answer/visa. Please advise possible options. Your options are just to wait, really. I mean, the pause will be lifted. You could participate in the lawsuits if you want to help get the pause lifted. Maybe that's how some people look at it. You could do that, or you could just wait until the pause is lifted. You've done all that you can do for the time being. There's nothing else you should do. Okay. Scarlett says, I'm in the US already and part of the 75 countries with suspended visa. Can I apply for AOS through DV? You can apply for AOS through DV, yes, but the DV lottery, not the 75 countries, but the DV lottery is under pause as well. So while the DV lottery pause is in place, USCIS are not issuing visas under that program, but they are doing interviews, they're doing all of the processing and everything else. So you can still apply for adjustment of status if you want. Uncle B, this has been the most entertaining stream. Good night, Simon. The paradox. Some say interview scheduling not pause since the DV pause. We know it's not pause. It's not a paradox. We know it's not pause. We know people are getting to annals. We know people are attending interviews. Like, believe it. I mean, if you don't want to believe it, that's fine, but it's 100% true. I don't know what you are doing here with this live stream. If you are missing common info and knowledge regarding the pause of DV, you've got a lot to learn on what's happening, I'm afraid. Okay. What do you expect to change the rules before the end of the pause? I don't know. It's a good question. What will they change because of the pause? Not very much for the DV lottery thing. I think for public charge, there may be some changes coming, including the new I-945 form possibility. They may change some things for public charge, but I don't think very much will change because of the DV pause, frankly. But we'll see. My passport expires in August. Should I renew it before entering the DV27 lottery to avoid potential issues? If I apply with one passport but later complete the process on a new one later on. People complete the process on a different passport all the time. It happens all the time. That's not a problem. As long as your DV lottery entry is done on a day where you have a legitimate, real, and unexpired passport, that's okay. And you give that passport. Then later you've got a new passport, that's fine, no problem. Okay. Hi, Simon, I have a question. Why do you help DV lottery winners? Is this your career at the moment, or is it more like a hobby? It's totally just a hobby. I have a career, I still work. I'm not retired yet. I'm a software architect. I've been in software engineering for a long time, 30-something years. And this is just a hobby. I don't get paid for this. I'm not a lawyer. This is not about me doing a career in immigration or anything like that. Why do I do this? Well, I went through the DV lottery process myself. My wife was a DV 2014 winner. And I'd already worked and lived in America prior to that, and so I was interested in coming back and continuing my career in America, and so I was more than happy to get that chance to come back. We came in 2014 on an H1 visa, and then later in 2014 we became green card holders through the DV program. As part of that, I learned about DV lottery. So this was back in 2012 and 2013. I was learning about DV lottery. And since that time, I've been helping people to give back, I suppose. I suppose that's it. It's to give back. I've benefited from it, and I wanted to give back. I happened to learn a lot about it along the way. I don't know why I've continued, really, but my wife and my family have been amazingly generous in allowing me to spend my time on this and helping other people, and they know it's important work to do. But I'm not looking to get rich from it or anything like that. It's not my career. No, it's just a hobby. So there you go. There is a possibility the green card lottery will come again next year. It can't be cancelled. Do you have hope? It's not cancelled. It's going to come back, and DV27 will be run. DV28 will be run probably on the more normal timescale. That's the other funny thing about DV27. They're going to be doing a DV28 entry period in October of this year, right? So there'll be 2 entry periods this year, which is going to be weird, but that's going to be something that will happen. So, we'll have to wait and see how exactly that works. Dear sir, you're a good person. Thank you, Veronica. That's lovely of you to say so. Do you think the program will resume silently? Perhaps it's restarted quietly in previous years. I can't see them announcing a restart publicly. Yeah, there's some truth to what you're saying there, Lucas, because much of what the government does is PR, right? When you look at Trump this week, is Trump really stupid enough to not know that that 18 NATO members did answer the call when America invoked Article 5 back in 2001? Is he really so stupid as to not know that? Does he really not understand that people, 457 people from the UK, lost their lives in a 20-year deployment in Afghanistan? The Denmark lost 44 people per capita. Denmark, funnily enough, talk about Greenland, Denmark lost more per capita than any other country, right? Because they're such a small, the population of Denmark is about 6 million people. So to lose 44 people from such a small country is a big deal, right? And that was because those NATO countries answered the call from America. America made the call, saying, we've been attacked. We're invoking Article 5. Trump pretended that didn't happen this week. Is he that stupid? My fundamental question is he that stupid? And that is a possibility. Is he that underinformed? Yeah, it's a possibility. Or is he smart enough to know that what he said was bullshit, but he doesn't care because it's more about the PR that stupid people listen to, right? His supporters are that stupid, and when he says those things are that has power, right? And so when they stop the DV program, the stupid people hear that and America is what I voted for. These brain dead, mouth breathing morons. They're very happy about that, right? And so would they silently, as you put it, quietly behind the scenes unpause the program? Yeah, it's a possibility. They certainly won't be shouting it from the rooftops because the PR campaign is what they want. It's very much about the PR campaign, but even the PR campaign becomes disgusting to most people after a while. Not necessarily about the DV lottery pause, but as I understand it, even Trump is now disturbed by the images we're seeing from Minnesota and so on, as any sensible person should be. Do you think DV numbers for SA26 will move for April? Since we see the updates from March up until now, yes, I do think SA needs to move. I didn't spend much time on their numbers, but embassy capacity is clearly there in South America, and so yeah, we should see some movement. Does it need to be big? No, it doesn't need to be big, but we should see some movement for Oceania and South America as well as for Europe. Those are key. Got my 2NL. I'm doing my medicals in Uganda, but interview is in Kenya. I don't know who is going to notify me about the document review. I don't know. You can read the instructions, but also you can contact the embassy, right? And just check with them. I don't know the details of every embassy's, nuances of how they operate the process, okay? Can you please say this year will be registration for Greencard? Okay, this year will be registration for Greencard. Is that all right? I said it. There's a possibility that Greencard lottery will come back again next year. It can't be cancelled. Do you have hope? I think I already answered this one. Already answered that one. Oh, answer to your question, how I missed 30 minutes. Missed YouTube notification. Yeah, I mean, it's just, it's Saturday morning. Come on. Like it's either important to you or it's not. If wait or even participate in the lawsuit, will we make to get definite answer before 30th September? Thanks, mate. The lawsuit cannot guarantee anything, right? And Curtis is usually very upfront about those things, and I'm sure he will be in this. He can't guarantee things. He can't guarantee that, well, he can't guarantee anything. He can't guarantee to win. He can't guarantee anything. A lawsuit is a chance to argue. It's not a definite result, right? Now, having said that, I really, like I said earlier, I think it would be extremely unethical, cruel, illogical, awful to be putting people through interviews and having them pay the fees and pay for the medicals and everything else. And then, with the clear intention to not lift the pause before 30th of September. I don't think that's the case at all. So whether you think that's going to come faster because of the lawsuit or not is what you've got to decide. But I don't think for 1 minute that we're going to see the pause go beyond 30th of September. Now, some people think that's the case. I don't agree with it at all. I strongly disagree with that. But some people don't want to wait, and some people therefore, believe the lawsuit is useful, even if they don't think it's entirely necessary. Okay, that's basically true. Can ICE touch us if we were to enter the USA with a green card through DV lottery? I'm sorry, I just know nothing about that organization. It's a fair question, the Rocker. So, can they touch you? How do I answer this one? ICE are an organization out of control at the moment. And the organization has been given some encouragement by various factions of the government and the Supreme Court and so on to do some things which are absolutely out of control, absolutely illegal, but they've been told that they're allowed to do that. And so ICE right now are misbehaving extremely badly in some ways, right? Now, having said that, ICE does have already had some powers that you'd be surprised that they had. So, for example, they can set up roadblocks in America, inside America, not just at the border, but anywhere, right? And the Border Patrol do this, where as long as it's within 100 miles of the border, they can set up roadblocks. And one of the borders, the southern border, the coast, or wherever. So that's a huge part of America. They can set up these roadblocks and they can stop you and they can ask your immigration status. Now, you are entitled to tell them to go F themselves, right? You can do that if you want, but they're entitled to keep you and detain you while you answer that question or until you answer that question. And sometimes it gets messy. Some people boldly like to test that theory and like to tell ICE to F off or Border Patrol to F off or whatever, and refuse to cooperate with them. It depends on what you're doing that day, whether you want to take your time to, is this an argument you want to have? In general, if you were stopped by ICE or Border Patrol or whatever, the quickest way to get out of there is simply to cooperate, right? They ask you, or if they ask me, am I a citizen? I'm going to say yes, right? But I'm going to say yes with a British accent. And so that if ICE were asking me, and they probably wouldn't because I'm a big white American looking guy, right? Let's be honest, they're not really worried about me because I'm not brown enough. That's the problem. Let's be honest about it. That's the problem, and that's why they wouldn't be asking me. But if they did ask me, if they heard my English accent, they would then probably go on to ask me, was I born in the country or am I a naturalized citizen? Now, I must tell the truth. I would have to say I'm a naturalized citizen, right? But as long as I do those basic things, I'm then going to be free to go, right? Now, is it right that they've got that power to ask me that? No, not really. It's not right. But, do I want to waste my whole day to have that argument with them? Now, I'm probably happily going to, tell them exactly what I think about them, with no qualms at all. Because we are entitled to say whatever the hell we want to police officers or ICE officers or whatever. We can be as belligerent as we like, right? Sometimes that will get people into trouble, but we can be that way in this country if we want to. It doesn't get you anywhere, but sometimes it feels good to explain to, to an ICE officer, let's say, exactly what you think of them. I left a message on someone's TikTok. This guy was a fireman, and he was talking about a bonus payment that you can get, or the salary that you would get for joining ICE. And it was, I can't remember what the salary was. It was some amount of money, which to him apparently sounded attractive. And I left a comment saying something like, "Oh, so that's the equivalent of 40 shekels in today's currency, is it?" And he probably understood the reference. I think there's a certain type of person that is more than happy to put on those ICE paramilitary uniforms and mask themselves up and to go around and behave like a moron, and they're loving that power. They're a certain type of personality and person that is loving doing that. But there's always more than one of them. It's never going to be a fair fight, right? If you try to take those guys on. So, you're probably better off just saying, "Yeah, I'm a citizen," or "I've got a green card." And if you've got a green card, by the way, if you're a green card holder, you're supposed to carry proof of that all the time, right? And you are entitled. And this isn't a recent rule. You're supposed to carry your green card with you, and you're supposed to provide that. If a law enforcement officer asks you for that green card, you should be able to show them. And so show them the physical green card, or a photocopy, or a photo of your passport, or something, right? So, make sure you understand your responsibilities. That's one of your responsibilities. Okay. Okay. How bad is the ICE situation in the US? Because everything we see on the news here in Europe is, it looks insane. Yeah, it does. Our school district where I live is undergoing a financial shortfall in the funding that they're getting, because they would not agree to a federal requirement to take away a bunch of books from the library, and because they don't want to agree to have ICE have free access to their schools. And they didn't agree to those things, and because of that, some federal funding has been taken away. So we're in difficult times, and those difficult times are, they're even coming to my little town, and there are probably undocumented immigrants living in my town. I'm quite sure there are, and some of those undocumented immigrants are probably sending their kids to school and that sort of thing. But most Americans don't understand that term, undocumented immigrants, and they don't understand also asylum or refugee status, and so they just think all immigrants are immigrants and they're all illegal. That's what they think. A lot of people think like that, and so it's unfortunate, the situation we're in, and it's pretty bad. Frankly, it's pretty bad right now. It's worrying, and it's upsetting for a lot of people. It sort of upsets me, but but I'm a big, strong boy. I can handle myself. But there are a lot of people who who are very affected by this, personally affected by this. It's worrying. I'm hopeful we will see the end of it soon, but we'll have to wait and see. Okay, I think we need to call that a day. Okay, I'll finish up with this because I think this is a common theme, right? So I'll finish up with this last question, then we'll call it a day. We'll call it the end of the it's been over 2 hours. Good Lord. So you said that you don't believe the pause will continue till September. Is that only because it's unbelievable that they will continue interviews in the meantime, or because of something else? There isn't some other, I think you're trying to sort of say, is there some law or something that is controlling this that says they can't pause and whatever. No, it's mainly the evidence. It's the evidence of how they've talked about this pause from the very beginning. What the laws are. This is a the duty they have to run this program is not up for debate. It's not a discretionary thing. It's a non-discretionary thing. The pause is, as long as it's reasonable and it's for good reason, they can get away with it, but it can't be considered reasonable if it's a pause for 8-9 months or whatever. That's unreasonable. That's by definition unreasonable. It can't be considered reasonable at that point. Now, the question of when it becomes unreasonable or when it's reasonable, etc., is a hard one to answer. But that's why you don't fire your weapon too soon, right? That's why you wait a little bit and you say, okay, we gave you a little bit of a chance. You've done this pause. You've been doing this DV review, but when are you going to finish that? Because it's unreasonable to continue that DV review for this long, right? And you come up with no comments, no information, no changes. So when's that going to finish, right? Oh, Friday. Okay, fine, Friday. Whenever it is, right? 75 country thing is about public charge. Okay, that's another reasonable concern, right? Is it reasonable that they picked these 75 countries? Not really, but they sort of justified it, right? So it's sort of reasonable for a while. For a while, it's reasonable, but against the background of the law that controls the DV lottery, it has to be become unreasonable at some point, and that's where lawsuits could get involved to sort of try and get a court to force the decision about what's reasonable, what's unreasonable. Ultimately that's what a court would decide, right? When does reasonable become unreasonable? But I think it will probably be over before that point, in all honesty. That's my general perspective. I certainly don't see it continuing till the end of September. So, for most people, that would be enough of an answer. Because if as long as the pause is over before the end of September, then cases going for interview now should be okay. They might have some complication. They'll have to retake their medicals or whatever, but they'll be issued, right? So, not that much harm will be done. But let's see what they do in the next visa bulletin. That's going to be the important sort of test of that concept, okay? All right, everybody, I think we'll call that a day. Thank you for joining me today. Thanks for your time. I hope you enjoyed this slightly longer than normal session. I didn't think I was going to have anything to talk about, but look at me. I can talk for 2 hours, apparently. All right, everybody. Have a great day. Bye-bye now.